Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on the Sports Stories podcast. I'm your host, AJ McSwain. Now, I know I've missed 2 weeks on the NFL predictions, but we're back on it, trying to keep us more, better schedule. So hopefully I can get this out in time, because I am recording on Thursday, because I spent all day recording that LeBron video to put out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. But let's get right into these Week 16 NFL predictions. Now, starting off with Thursday's game, which is probably going to be pretty boring. We have the Jaguars at the Jets. Now, the Jaguars coming off of a very good win over the Cowboys over there in overtime. Crazy game. Didn't expect that to really happen. But Trevor Lawrence probably had one of the best games of his career. 27 for 42, 318 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Pretty good. Can't say much there. Travis Etienne did his thing, 19 carries, 103 yards. Same with Jamal Agnew, 3 carries of 52 yards. Zay Jones was definitely the player of the game in that one. If it wasn't Trevor Lawrence, he was making plays happen. He had 109 yards on 6 receptions and 3 total touchdowns. Christian Kirk had 92 yards on 6 receptions. Evan Ingram, 62 yards on 8 receptions, which is really nice to see the revival of Evan Ingram's career. Over there in New York, it just was not happening. And here in Jacksonville, he's definitely making a resurgence for himself. Defensively, Rayshon Jenkins had 2 interceptions, one being a pick 6 there at the end of the game to win in overtime. And here, the Jaguars had 9 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 85 total tackles. So really not bad. They were doing their thing, getting it done against one of the better defenses in the league. Trevor Lawrence had a great game, so that's surprising to see, and I can't wait to see where, Doug Peterson really develops Trevor Lawrence's game here in the future, because he definitely looks like a weapon out there. And then we got the Jets. They're playing against the Lions at home, and they lost by 3. One of the, more boring nail-biters. There's nothing really happened. Zach Wilson came back in his return, did decently well. Kind of fooling some of those in the sports media realm that he could be a good quarterback. But then again, he was playing against the Lions defense, which has, played a little bit better as of recently. But it's still the Lions defense. So, his numbers may say one thing, but if you see him on the field, it says another. So, Zach Wilson did 18 for 35, 317 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, and was sacked 4 times. The Jets couldn't really get anything out of the run game, which was interesting because the Lions have one of the worst running defenses in the league as of right now. But Garrett Wilson did his thing, 92 yards on 4 receptions. Jeff Smith, coming out of nowhere, 77 yards on 4 receptions. And Elijah Moore had 51 yards on 4 receptions. Had a really crucial catch near the end of the game to get the Jets into field goal range, which they ended up missing to tie the game. Defensively, they had 5 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, no sacks, and 67 total tackles, which, Lions have one of the better offensive lines in the league, so it makes sense that they really could not get to the quarterback. But overall, the Jets really could have tied up the game, even possibly won the game, if they were able to really use their time. They had all 3 timeouts with about 1:50 left. And I didn't think they, let me see, I think the last one that they used was, the first timeout that they used, I want to say is so timeout number 1 by the Jets was taken at 19 seconds left in the game. So they got it with 1:49. 1:49 was their first play. Sack for a loss of 9. and then an incomplete pass. He, on 3rd and 19, he gets a pass to Garrett Wilson for 22 yards. So they get the first down. Incomplete pass. Then Garrett Wilson gets another 10-yard reception for a first down. Then incomplete pass. And then Zach Wilson sacked for 8 yards. So now they take their timeout with 19 seconds left. Then incomplete pass. And then on 4th and 18, he gets a 20-yard pass to Elijah Moore. And then they take their second timeout with 1 second left. So somewhere in here, they definitely could have taken their first timeout before 19 seconds. Could have taken it after the first sack. Could have maybe taken it after the Garrett Wilson play for 22 yards. Maybe the one after the 10-yard gain. Maybe even after the sack at 24 seconds. It was pretty bad timeout management there. And I could see where both Zach Wilson and Robert Saleh's time management really interfered with the Jets losing that one. But they very well could have won that one. But as for this one, I do have the Jaguars winning. I think, overall, they're coming off of a good win against the Cowboys. They had to win in overtime, but a good win is a good win, in my opinion. And they played really good. The defense did pretty well. Offensively, Trevor Lawrence had one of the best games of his career. Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, they're doing their thing. Travis Etienne. Overall, it's a pretty complete team. Next season they might be a team to watch out for, and they're still in the race for the playoffs. The Titans lead the NFC South by, or the AFC South by, I want to say 1 game. I believe the Titans may have 7 wins, and the Jags have 8? Let me see. Just so I can make sure I'm not giving false information here. AFC South. So yeah, Tennessee is 7-7. Jaguars are 6-8. So Jacksonville could very well get a playoff spot here, and if they get in the playoffs, there could be something there. There could be something there. The Titans do play the Texans next week, so that might be a pretty easy win for them. And then the Jags play the Jets, which I think the Jags will win. And then I want to say, what's the next thing? Because the Titans play the Cowboys next week, or I guess I should say next week. So they play the Cowboys next week, which that one might be hard for them. And the Jaguars have to go to Houston to play the Texans. So it really might not be that out of reach for the Jaguars. And then it really comes down, if the Jaguars are able to beat the Jets and the Texans, and in this hypothetical the Titans beat the Texans, then and then lose to the Cowboys, it would come down to the last game of the season, because the Titans go over to Jacksonville to play there. So that could really have AFC South championship complications there. So, or implications, I should say, not complications, there. So, that really is a big point in that last. So if they're able to win both games this week and next week, and hypothetically the Titans beat the Texans and lose to the Cowboys, the Jaguars could very well win it with a win over the Titans with the very last game of the season. But yeah, overall, I think this week, the Jaguars would definitely beat the Jets. Zach Wilson really hasn't shown much that he can really lead this team still. And Trevor Lawrence looks like he's on his way to becoming one of the better quarterbacks in this league. So go ahead and give me the Jags for this one. Now, next up, we have the Falcons at the Ravens. Now, the Falcons coming off of a close loss to the Saints, losing by 3, 21-18. And this was Desmond Ridder's first start. Nothing much, really. 13 for 26, 97 yards, and was sacked 4 times. But only for a loss of 8 yards in total, so only 2 yards per sack isn't bad. But they do kind of stack up. Tyler Algier, And Tyler Algier, 139 yards on 17 carries and a touchdown. Cordell Patterson, 52 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown. Receiving wise, Drake London, 70 yards, 7 receptions. He's doing his thing. Defensively, 3 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 63 total tackles. I think here they really just could not get much done. Only 27 yards went to other people. Desmond Ridder targeted Drake London the most with 11 targets, and 70 yards of Desmond Ridder's 97. So only 27 other yards went to somebody else. So, because Michael Pruitt, 20 yards, Avery Williams, 10 yards, Algier, -3 yards. So really, not a great showing overall offensively. The run game did its thing, but you can only stick for it for so long, because if you're still down and it's near the end of the game, you really have to pass it more than you have to run it. So they had to pass it, and it just was not needed, or I guess not needed, but it just wasn't. It wasn't really ideal. It wasn't really ideal. But Desmond Ridder in his first game didn't do all too bad. Just really could not get much done through the air. But hopefully that changes this game against the Ravens. But as for the Ravens, they played on Saturday against the Browns, and it was a pretty low scoring game. I think it was like 3-6 at halftime, and then the final score is 13-3. Huntley tried to do his best, 17 for 30, 138 yards, and 1 interception, was sacked 3 times for 12 yards. So it's about 4 yards per sack. And then J.K. Dobbins, he was trying his best, 125 yards on 13 carries. Gus Edwards, 55 yards on 7 carries. J.K. Dobbins just was recently taken off the injury report for the Ravens, so it does look like he will play. It does look like he will play in this one against the Falcons. They really couldn't get anything off the air, though. Really nothing much. And defensively, they had 5 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 69 total tackles. But overall, the Ravens really tried to get something going, but with Lamar out, it's kind of hard to see, or kind of hard to say what they could still be doing. Looking at the Ravens here, they're still only second in the AFC North, right behind Cincinnati, and Cincinnati looks red hot right now. So I'm not sure if they're gonna be able to win the division. Because Cincinnati's playing against Patriots this week, and then they got Bills, which might be a tough one for them, and then they have to play the Ravens at home. Then as for the Ravens schedule, they play the Falcons this week, Steelers, and Bengals. So kind of a tough situation for them, especially if Lamar is still out, which I believe he is still out for this one against the Falcons. I haven't really seen much news on him, or him being able to play against the Falcons. The last time I heard about it, Harbaugh just didn't really make any comment about it. So it is kind of hard to tell what might be happening, but as of right now, it does look like the Ravens are favorites to win, so that might mean that Lamar's out. But I don't see much news about Lamar being, or that might mean that Lamar's in, but I don't see much news about Lamar being out or in for this one, so can't really give a solid answer. I'm sure somebody knows, and I'm gonna look like a idiot here, but not sure if he's gonna be in. But as for this one, I do have the Ravens winning. I think the Falcons have shown that they just can't close out games against teams that don't really have the best offenses, and the Ravens don't really have the best offense as of right now. And I think very well the Ravens. I think they have a really not so good offense, but the Falcons, they're gonna have a tough time closing it out, especially with that run game. I mean, the Falcons. Let me see here. The Falcons last week. Let me see how much they gave up against the Saints rushing wise. Alvin Kamara had 91 total yards with 21 carries. The Saints were able to rack up 134 total yards on 34 total carries. The Ravens have really good running backs. They have a really good 1-2 punch with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So I think it's going to be hard for them to defend. And I think the Ravens should end up getting the win here at home. Now, next up, we have the Lions at the Panthers. Now, the Lions coming off of a close one against the Jets, where I thought they should have won pretty easily. Jets gave them a really good fight offensively. The Lions defense, showing the holes that they really have, which is going to be kind of scary to see, once they make it to the playoffs, once they have to play these better teams. Is the defense really going to be able to step up? Since they really struggled against the Jets offense. But they were able to get a pick, though. But Jared Goff, 23 for 38, 252 yards, and a touchdown. One of his better away games. He hasn't really been doing good, away. So, pretty good game for Jared Goff there. DeAndre Swift had 52 yards on 8 carries. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 76 yards on 7 receptions. Khalif Raymond, 53 yards on 5 receptions. And also a punt return touchdown, which was pretty nice. Brock Wright, 51 yards on 1 reception, and a touchdown. So that was that game-winning catch there for 51 yards. And then defensively, the Lions had 10 quarterback hits, 4 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks on 58 total tackles, as well as that Jerry Jacobs interception. That was almost a touchdown. So, overall, the Lions played really well. They had to grind this one out. A little scary. They really couldn't. It wasn't really like a high-scoring game for them, like it usually is. But more often than not, you see the Lions on the other side of these games where they have to kick a field goal in order to tie it up. And for them to be on this other side, hoping that another team misses a field goal is pretty new to both the Lions and Lions fans alike. So I think this one's going to be, this is going to be an interesting season because Lions need a lot to make the playoffs, but hopefully it could be one that's pretty miraculous. Now, this one is going to be, most of these games are going to be on Christmas Eve, so, some Christmas miracles may be happening. And then as for the Panthers, they lost in another close one against the Steelers, losing by 8 points, 24-16. Pretty shocking. I thought the Panthers had a lead there for a little bit, but Steelers were able to get it back from them. As for the Panthers, Sam Darnold, 14 for 23, 225 yards, and a touchdown, was sacked 4 times for a loss of 37 yards. Really could not get anything off the ground. Their leading rusher had 10 yards. That's Chuba Hubbard on 10 yards with 4 carries. Through the air, they could get it done, though. DJ Moore, Sam Darnold's one of Sam Darnold's biggest targets, had 6 targets with 5 total receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard couldn't get off the ground, but he was able to do it through the air, 57 yards on 3 receptions. And then Terrence Marshall Jr., 51 yards on 3 receptions. Looked pretty great here. Defensively, they had 2 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, only 1 sack, and 81 total tackles. The Dodge Foreman did fumble, but it was recovered by the Panthers. But really, nothing much. I think it's just that the Panthers were able to really develop a run game. Sorry, I'm going to move you a little bit closer. The Panthers were able to run use that run game to their advantage. They probably would have been able to win this one, but just the lack of running. They only had 16 carries in total for 21 total yards. So just not the best performance there. And I think that's really led them to lose this one. But as for this game, I do have the Lions winning. I think, the last 6 of their 7. Maybe they can win last 7 of their 8. The Panthers really haven't shown me that they can really do much. I mean, they just lost to the Steelers, and Steelers offense just has not been looking too good. I mean, Najee Harris is making a resurgence, but I mean, they went up against Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. And you can say the same with the Lions defense. They played against Zach Wilson at quarterback and gave up 300-plus yards to Zach Wilson. And, in prior weeks, they gave up like 400 to Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, you could say that you're a little bit scared for the Lions defense, and that's what's kind of hindering them, which I believe that as well. I mean, the Panthers could really pull a fast one on the Lions here, since, how bad the Lions defense is. But I mean, the Lions, they have a good chance of making the playoffs. I think the players know it, and I think they've definitely shown that they're trying to play as hard as possible, trying to get these wins. They're grinding out some ones, and hopefully, as a Lions fan, I really want to see them win. So this prediction could be a little biased, but I think the Lions just have shown that they are the better team compared to the Panthers. It's going to be a tough one at an away game for the Lions, but I think they could definitely get it done here. Now, next up, we have the Seahawks at the Chiefs. Now, the Seahawks lost a close one, losing by 8 points to the 49ers on Thursday Night Football, losing 21-13. Really not the best performance in the red zone by the Seahawks once again, really showing that aggressiveness when it's not needed. And Geno Smith went 31 for 44, 238 yards, and a touchdown. Was also sacked 3 times for the loss of 31 total yards. And Kenneth Walker's return, kind of underwhelming. Thought he would do better, but he only had 47 yards on 12 carries. I mean, the 49ers were able to shut down that run game. Tyler Lockett, 68 yards with 7 receptions. DK Metcalf, 55 yards on 7 receptions. And it does look like Tyler Lockett will be out for this one against the Chiefs due to a finger injury, I want to say, a broken finger, which they did say he's probably going to be only out for 1 game, so it's just going to be this one. But it is kind of, it does still hurt the Seahawks, since this is a crucial time in their season. They're placed right above the Lions in the playoff hunt, and right below the Commanders for that 7th spot. So it's definitely going to be tough for them tough loss for Tyler Lockett, especially with them playing the Chiefs. And the Commanders, I mean, they're playing quite a tough team, I believe, in the, let me go ahead and see what they're playing, the 49ers. So yeah, it's going to be tough. So, I mean, really, this playoff race for this 7th spot is pretty wide open. I mean, the Giants may have a guaranteed spot, really, but that's not even guaranteed. I mean, they still only have 8 wins on the season, and the Giants very well could possibly lose out. I mean, they play the Vikings this week, and then they play the Colts, which, I mean, we're really unsure, but I mean, they could definitely beat the Colts. And then they play the Eagles for the last game of the season. So in this 3-game stretch, the Giants could really only win 1, in my opinion, and that'll be against the Colts. So, I mean, the Giants would be ending 9-7-1. And the Seahawks record, or not record, but schedule runs pretty easy after this Chiefs game. If they lose to the Chiefs, which I think they will, they'll be 7-8, and then they'll be able to win 2 games. So the Jets and the Rams games, I think, are pretty winnable for them. So they would end the season with a 9-8 record. So they could win that 7th spot, if the Giants aren't able to get it. So in this hypothetical, right, if the Giants only win 1 of their last 3 games, that makes them 9-7-1. So they very well could keep that spot. Now, the Seahawks could get the 7th spot, and that is if the Lions don't win out. If the Lions don't win out, then the Seahawks get that 7th spot. But the Lions do win out, and they get the 10 wins. They could potentially take that 6th spot over the Giants, and then causing the Giants fall down to the 7th spot, and then the Commanders fall down to the 8th, Seahawks fall down to the 9th. Because as for the Commanders, they go up against the 49ers, right? And then they have to, sorry, wrong week. And then they have to go against the 49ers this week. And then, let me see the rest of their schedule. Then they have to play the Browns, which might be winnable for them, and the Cowboys. So, I mean, worst case scenario for the Commanders, they lose 3 straight, causing them to be 7-9-1. Or, yeah, if they lose 3 straight, they'll be 7-9-1. And then that, would cause them to probably lose that playoff spot, because as of right now they're at the 7th seed. So, I mean, if you're putting it in perspective here, the Seahawks could possibly make their way to a 7th spot, but they would need the Giants to lose out practically. They would need the Lions, or they would need the Lions just not to win out, so at least just lose one game, and then they would need the Giants to lose out in order to make the playoffs. So, I mean, this is very, very, capable of making the playoffs here. And I think the Seahawks could very well do it. This playoff scenario for the last 2 spots is pretty crazy. There's a lot that needs to happen, but I know what I just said was very complicated, but Seahawks could definitely do it. They just didn't play that good against the 49ers, and they're most likely going to have to play teams like that in the playoffs, which I don't think they will be able to. But, as for this week, they're playing against one of the better teams in the league, and that's the Chiefs, and I just don't think they'll be able to get it done, especially with the loss of Tyler Lockett. Not really sure if they're going to be able to get much done. Kenneth Walker might be able to have a game, but the Chiefs' defensive line is somewhat comparable to that of the 49ers, so I'm not sure if they're going to be able to really use much on the run game. And Geno Smith's main target is probably going to be DK Metcalf, but he's probably going to be matched up with one of the better DBs on the Chiefs roster, so it's going to be really hard for him to really get the ball anywhere. So I think overall the Chiefs might have this one in the bag. Now, next up, we have the Saints at the Browns. Now, the Saints coming off of a 3-point win over Atlanta. In Desmond Ridder's first start, Andy Dalton went 11 for 17, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill playing a little bit at quarterback, 2 for 2, 80 yards on 1 touchdown as well. So they were doing their thing. Alvin Kamara, 91 yards on 21 carries. Rashid Shaheed had a big catch in the middle of the game for that touchdown, but he also had 95 yards on 3 receptions. Juwan Johnson, 67 yards on 4 receptions and 2 touchdowns. He had a game. And Chris Olave, 53 yards on 3 receptions. Defensively, they had 5 QB hits, 8 pass deflections, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 70 total tackles. So, overall, the Saints had a pretty good win. They did have to grind it out, but they still had a really good win over a division rival. But I think none of the NFC South teams are going to be able to make the playoffs except for the Buccaneers, who are winning the division currently. And I think they might win it. But there's a good chance that the Panthers might, I believe. Let me see, in the AFC or the NFC South. No, actually, it is pretty up for grabs here. The last 3 teams in the NFC South both share all 5 wins, with Carolina, New Orleans, and Atlanta both all being 5-9, and then the Tampa Bay is only 6-8. So this is one of the worst divisions. Kind of reminds me of the NFC East last year, where none of the teams were good, and then Philly made the playoffs and just got absolutely smacked by the Buccaneers. So, there's the Saints. The NFC South is really still up for grabs at this point. It's not even clinched yet. They still have 3 games in the season. Any team could really win out and still make the playoffs. And then as for the Browns, they're coming off that 10-point win over the Ravens. Deshaun Watson scoring his first touchdown in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson went 18 for 28, 161 yards and a touchdown, along with 3 sacks for the loss of 21 total tackles. Which, it just kind of seems like his return has been somewhat lackluster. Maybe it's just because he hasn't really been practicing all season with the team, and he just doesn't really know everything yet. But, he just has not looked, what he was like with the Texans yet. And maybe, he comes into that form next season, because, he'll be able to practice with them for the entirety of next season, but it just has not looked too good for him. Nick Chubb, 99 yards on 21 carries. Amari Cooper had 58 yards on 4 receptions. And really, that was about it for offensively. This is one that was really grinded out by the defense. They had 8 QB hits, 6 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks on 61 total tackles, and an interception by Denzel Ward, which, I mean, really, they really need that. I mean, they just haven't looked that good whatsoever. And defensively, they've been doing really good in the past few weeks, really limiting offenses. This one was really one that they had to grind out. And they were able to get it done. Since it was really just a low scoring game, it's a defensive matchup. But as for this one was really a toss up for me. Either choosing the Saints or the Browns, but I went ahead and chose the Browns. I think they have a better defense. They could really put some pressure on the Saints offense. I think it's going to be, once again, another defensive matchup for the Browns, and I think the Browns have a little bit of a better defense, so I chose them to win here. Okay, so next up we have the Texans at the Titans. Now, the Texans coming off of a close loss to the Chiefs, surprisingly. That one was a really close one. That one went into overtime. I was not expecting that. But Texans couldn't come out with the win in overtime. Davis Mills with a crucial fumble in their own their own territory. The fumble makes it pretty close, and Jerick McKinnon gets a easy rushing touchdown for the win. But Davis Mills went 12 for 24, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Royce Freeman, 11 carries for 51 yards. I mean, so far, I don't even think Damian played in this one. And then receiving wise, really could not get anything off the ground, really. Defensively, they had 3 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 89 total tackles. So really, just a kind of good game. At least they kept it really close with the Chiefs, but, just that crucial fumble in overtime allowed the Chiefs to come back allowed them to score that touchdown there at the end of the game. But really nothing much to report on there. Just, Damon Williams is not playing, apparently. And they just really did not have that good of a game. The Chiefs just didn't have a good one either, but they kept it close. And Texans, that's probably their best game. I'll give them that pity win, at least they played really tough against a really hard opponent. But overall, just not a great game played by either team in that one. And then as for the Titans, they're coming off of a 3-point loss to the Chargers. Ryan Tannehill went 15 for 22, 165 yards, and an interception. It does look like he is going to be out for this game against the Texans. It does look like he suffered a season-ending injury, so he will be out for the season for the Titans. So, which is another tough one if they do want to win the AFC South, having them without Ryan Tannehill. And obviously, Malik Willis hasn't really panned out so far in his rookie season. We'll have to see when the second time comes around when he's starting and see if he learned anything from his first time starting in this season. So we'll have to see what happens, but definitely a big hit to the Titans if they really want to win the AFC South. Derrick Henry doing his thing, 104 yards on 21 carries and a touchdown. Derrick Henry also doing it on the through the air as well, 59 yards on 4 receptions. And another receiver. These Titans receivers, man, coming out of nowhere. Chigoziem Okonkwo. I know I said that wrong. I know that's Chigoziem Okonkwo. Had 54 yards on 4 receptions. Please forgive me for that bad pronunciation. And they had 8 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 73 total tackles, as well as 2 interceptions, one from Kevin Byard and another one from Joshua Kalu. So, overall, great game by the Titans defensively, but they just could not get anything really done offensively, especially, the injury to Ryan Tannehill definitely hurt them, even though it was really late into the game. That definitely hurt them. The offensive line performance wasn't really the best on passing attack, allowing 4 sacks for a loss of 28 yards. I mean, overall, it was a good game overall played by both teams, but I think the Titans just could not really get much done, causing them to end up losing that one. But it's definitely a close, grinded out one for them, but they just could not get it done. But as for this game, I do have the Titans winning. I think it's pretty obvious. Sorry, I just hit my mic again. The the Texans are one of the worst teams in the NFL. They just have not been able to close out games when they need to, and they're going to have to do it against the Titans. But they just have shown that their run defense isn't the best, and I mean, Derrick Henry is a good runner. And we'll have to see how Malik Willis does start. See, if that does contribute to the Texans possibly winning. But we'll have to see again if he did learn anything from his first time starting this season. So it's going to be exciting to watch Malik Willis out there, but I still have the Titans winning. I think they overall have the more complete team, even without Ryan Tannehill. Now, next up, we have the Bengals at the Patriots. Now, the Bengals going up against the Buccaneers. Buccaneers are up 17-zip early into the game, and then I believe the Bengals scored like 24 unanswered points, something like that, something crazy. And I mean, the game just turned around at halftime. I mean, it was incredible, really. I mean, looking at it, it was 17-3 at halftime. And then the Bengals scored 17 unanswered points in the third quarter, and then scored 14 points to the Buccaneers 6 points in the fourth quarter. And then looking at the Bengals here, Joe Burrow 27 for 39, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had a 54.1 QBR, 104.7 rating. Really couldn't get anything off the ground with him, with Samaje Perine being the leading rusher with only 24 yards on 7 carries. Jamar Chase doing his thing through the air when I needed him to. Okay, I had him in my fantasy football playoffs. It was not looking good, but he just said go off. During that 17 unanswered point run that they had, and but luckily it wasn't enough because I had him in another league and I was playing against him in another league. So he scored enough points for me and didn't score enough points for the other person in the other league. So I'm happy about that. But the Bengals were able to get it done. Jamar Chase 60 yards on 7 receptions and a touchdown. Defensively, the Bengals had 7 QB hits, 8 pass deflections, 1 tackle for loss, 1 sack, and 81 total tackles. And as well as 2 interceptions, one by Trey Flowers and another one by Jermaine Pratt. I mean, just overall, great second half game by the Bengals. I mean, they were just able to get it done against the Buccaneers. So definitely very good win by the Bengals, in my opinion. And then moving on to the Patriots game, losing by 6 to the Raiders in the most befuddling, confusing ways I've ever seen. And as a Raiders fan, I'm happy about that, So let me break it down, okay? For anybody that didn't see it, it's tied 24-24 at this point. Ramondre Stevenson gets the ball. He's running. He gets past the line to gain for the field goal, but obviously they can't go down because time expired, right? So instead of just being tackled, taking the tie, and I don't know if Bill Belichick was like, we're going for the win here. We're not going for, we're not going into overtime. Let's go for the win here. So I'm not sure what the entire game plan was behind this. If Bill Belichick was like, go for the win, or, if they were just like, try and run it, try to score a touchdown. If you can't, we're going into overtime. But Ramondre Stevenson goes, he gets a nice run too. He's breaking off for a lot of yards. He could have gotten a touchdown, but, he gets trapped by the defense, obviously. There were still a lot of yards left to go. And he gets past the line to gain for a field goal. And once he does that, he pitches it back to Jakobi Meyers. And this one was the worst part about this play, right? Because Jakobi Meyers is running backwards now. And there's nobody behind him except for Mac Jones. And there's 2 D ends right by Mac Jones. So Jakobi Meyers runs backwards, tries to find somebody before getting tackled, tries to throw it back to Mac Jones extremely short. It's picked off by Chandler Jones, who's in front of Mac Jones, and stiff arms Mac Jones into the floor. made a grave for Mac Jones on the field, just buries him on sight, and then runs back for a touchdown. That is insane to me. I don't know what was all happening really in this. Like, what was the center? Like, was Bill Belichick saying go for the win, or was he just like try to score a touchdown? I'm not really sure, but Ramondre Stevenson was feeling like, oh, no overtime. There's no overtime. There's no such thing as overtime, right? So he pitches it back. And then Jakobi Meyers, he also must have been feeling like, okay, we have to win this one. And then no overtime. He said no overtime as well. And then he proceeds to run backwards and then tries to pitch it back to Mac. Like, what is Mac Jones doing? Mac Jones is not a good runner. He's not a runner. He's not a running quarterback. Why are you passing it? He's not going to be able to pass it forward just because he's behind the line of scrimmage. I think I had to go backwards. There's nobody behind him. There's nobody behind Jakobi Meyers. There's nobody behind Mac Jones. So why are you throwing it back there? He throws it back there, and Chandler Jones, easy pick, stiff arm into the ground, buries Mac Jones, the Undertaker, and then takes it back, touchdown for the win. Amazing. Can't say anything else about Chandler Jones. I mean, amazing play by him. And I mean, Patriots that was just sad to watch. But Mac Jones was 13 for 31. Jeez, he had 112 yards. That was really about it. Ramondre Stevenson, again, 19 carries for 172 yards and a touchdown. But really couldn't get really anything through the air. And then defensively, they had one touchdown, pick six by Kyle Duggar. And then 5 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 1 tackle for loss, 3 sacks, and 72 total tackles. So they were doing their thing. Patriots were able to do their thing. The Raiders are doing their thing, but the Patriots just were not able to get it done. They had it in the palm of all they could have done was get into overtime, and then it's up the chance of the coin toss, and then even if it goes to the Raiders, then you have to believe in your defense. And the Patriots were like, no, we're going for that win, and it did not turn out well for them. But as for this one, I do have the Bengals winning. I mean, they obviously just had one of the better performances last week against the Buccaneers, and I mean, Patriots lost in probably the most confusing way of all time. So I think the Bengals, morale is probably low for the Patriots, and I think morale is high for the Bengals, and Bengals are getting hot at the right time. I think they're trying to win the AFC North to get that playoff spot, which I think they can. And that starts off with a win against the Patriots, which they really need. So give me the Bengals here, at an away game in New England. Now, next up, we have the Giants at the Vikings. Now, the Giants coming off of a clutch win against the Commanders, really needed. I mean, the Giants are also in the playoff hunt. They really need the wins. Now, there was a little controversy surrounding this game. If that last play by that Giants defender on, I believe, Curtis Samuel was a PI, which it looked like a blatant PI. I mean, bro was hugging his back. Like, that is blatant PI. In Washington, too. So, I don't know. I guess Giants' pockets run pretty deep, in my opinion. But the Giants were able to get it done. Daniel Jones, 21 for 32, 160 yards. Saquon Barkley, 87 yards on 18 carries and a touchdown. Really couldn't get anything off of the ground, really, for the receiving game. Defensively, they did have a touchdown, which I don't even know how, because I don't see a pick six on the stat sheet. So they had a touchdown somewhere. And then they had 8 QB hits, 6 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 67 total tackles. So overall, I mean, pretty good game overall by the Giants. I mean, that rush game was able to do it. Defensively, it looked pretty nice. That one, it was the fumble recovery for the touchdown by Kayvon Thibodeaux. I remember, okay. Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeaux had a really good rush there. Good communication by the defensive line, by the other defensive end, David Ojulari. They were able to get that one done. That was a nice communication, nice play. Kayvon Thibodeaux goes deep, gets the strip sack, gets the fumble for a touchdown as well. Couldn't ask for anything much there. Overall, great game by the Giants, even though that last play may have been pass deflection or pass interference, but who knows if the Commanders would have got the 2-point conversion to tie up the game. So overall, good game by the Giants, but has one with that little bit of an asterisk on it. And then as for the Vikings, man, as a Lions fan, we were hoping to win out so we could tie the Vikings for that spot if the Vikings lost, or if the Vikings lose out, the Lions would tie them and the Lions would win the tiebreaker due to the point differential from both of the games. And I saw the score at half, 33-0, and I was like, oh, cool. The Lions still have a chance to win the NFC North. And then I go back to I'm getting notifications, right? Oh, there might be I see it was like 33-27 or something like that at one point in the game. And I was like, there's no way that they get this comeback. And they did. Largest comeback in NFL history. 33 points. Matt Ryan did it again. He did it again. He blew another lead. That man is suffering PTSD. Okay, this man is blowing leads everywhere, and I feel bad for him, man. If he has to go ahead and see all those memes. I mean, first you blow the Super Bowl, right? That's already gotta be tough as it is. Everybody's memeing, oh, you're 28-3, how'd you lose? Now it's 33-0 and you still lost. I don't even know how you did that. That's like the Warriors being up 3-1. How do you even lose that lead? How do you, all you gotta do, how do you even lose? How do you even lose that lead? That is crazy to me. Hit the mic again. Matt Ryan, 19 for 33. Or actually, no, this is the Vikings game, never mind. Kirk Cousins, 34 for 50. 54 attempted passes, 46 yards, 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was sacked 7 times. 7 times. Dalvin Cook, 95 yards, 17 carries. KJ Osborne had a game, 157 yards on 10 receptions and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 123 yards on 12 receptions and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook even did it through the air, 95 yards, 4 receptions and a touchdown. I mean, they were getting it done. And defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 97 total tackles. I mean, that's got to be one of the greatest performances I've ever seen, right? He was 33-0 at halftime, right? Vikings then score 14 points. It's 36-14 at the end of the third quarter. 36-14. And then the Vikings proceed to score 25 unanswered points, right? That is crazy. 36-14 by the end of the third quarter. Then the Vikings scored 22 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to tie up the game. And then in overtime, they score off a game-winning field goal in overtime. I'm speechless about that game. That's crazy. That is crazy to me. But the Vikings were able to get the win there. And I think morale's high. Kirk Thuggins, Patrick Peterson, they're getting it done. And they already clinched the NFC North, so they already got that playoff spot. They're back at home against the Giants. I think they win this one here against the Giants. I think the Vikings are the better team overall, and against the Giants. So I think the Vikings should have a pretty easy one. Now next up we have the Bills at the Bears. Now the Bills winning a close one against the Dolphins, winning by 3, 32-29. Keeping that lead in the AFC East, and I believe they've clinched the AFC East, or at least they've clinched a playoff spot, and it looks like they most likely are going to win the AFC East because go ahead and look at their schedule. They go up against the Bears this week, then the Bengals and the Patriots. That's a very winnable schedule. I mean, the Bengals probably is the scariest team on their schedule so far, but I mean, that's definitely very winnable for them if they just play their cards right. But Josh Allen for this one against the Dolphins was 25 for 40, 340 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Incredible. No interceptions. Josh Allen also was the leading rusher, 10 carries for 77 yards. Dawson Knox did his thing through the air, 98 yards, 6 receptions, and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 60 yards, 5 receptions. And Gabe Davis, 56 yards on 4 receptions. Definitely doing their thing. And then defensively, they had 4 QB hits, 6 pass deflections, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 53 total tackles. So, I mean, overall, pretty a well-rounded game by the Bills. Josh Allen getting 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Basically everybody on the roster receiving-wise got it. Even Cole Beasley's return to Buffalo had a 9-yard reception. So, I mean, overall, I mean, they played really well. Josh Allen did lose a fumble, but they were able to get it back, get another one back that Josh Allen fumbled. But, I mean, Buffalo, pretty well-rounded game there. And then as for the Bears, losing a close one to the Eagles. This one was pretty shocking. I know Jalen Hurts did get injured during the game, but I believe he still played the entire game. And it looks like he might be out this week against the Cowboys, which is definitely going to be tough, and I'll touch on that later. But as for the Bears, I mean, Justin Fields, I just hit my mic, jeez. Justin Fields is probably the great, I feel like Justin Fields is going to go down as a quarterback, one of the greatest, if he has loyalty though. If you think about it, if he plays with the Bears for his entire career, he's going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to never win a ring. Okay? Because Justin Fields, man, that run was amazing. The touchdown was called back because he stepped out of bounds, but I mean, oh my gosh. That is one of the best. Oh man, that was one of the best runs I've ever seen. And it hurts me to compliment a Bears quarterback so well, but I mean, he just went off. I hope he doesn't do that against the Lions next week, though. But Justin Fields, 14 for 21, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 6 times. This man is getting beat up. 41.1 QBR, 119.5 rating. I mean, what more could you ask of this man? 95 yards on 15 carries. David Montgomery, 53 yards on 12 carries and a touchdown. I mean, they couldn't do anything through the air, though, receiving-wise. I mean, nobody really got the ball downfield that much. Defensively, I think this is where they stood out against the Eagles. 1 QB hit, 7 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 66 total tackles, and 2 interceptions, one from DeAndre Houston Carson, and another one from Kyler Gordon. And, it allowed them to stay in this one, but I mean, they had the lead very early on, but they just were not able to keep it. Kept it close throughout the game. I mean, it was 10-6 by halftime, and then it was 17-13 by the end of the third quarter. And then ended 25-20. Really close game. I want to say that, that touchdown with a minute 37 left, or not a minute 37 left. Sorry, with about 2 minutes 43 seconds left. Scored that touchdown. They tried to get onside kick, but couldn't get it. Eagles got it, and they just kind of ran out the clock. So I mean, really was possibly a game, easy win for the Bears. I mean, or not easy win, but they definitely could have won the game. The Bears showing a lot of fight for a team that should be tanking for a better pick, maybe a better offensive lineman, or a better receiver, or better linebacker. I don't really know, but they're trying to win for some reason. Don't know why. But as for this one, I do have the Bills winning. I think it's pretty obvious. I think the Bills should easily be able to get this one done. The Bears defense has struggled. Even in this one against the Eagles, they allowed Jalen Hurts to throw for 315 yards. A.J. Brown had 181 yards. Devontae Smith had 126 yards. I mean, if they're giving those amounts of yards up to, players of this caliber, right, a duo this good, think about how much they're going to give up to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So I think the Bills should be able to win this one. Now, next up, we have the Commanders at the 49ers. Now, the Commanders coming off that tough loss to the Giants, where it was a debatable pass interference or not, but again, we're not sure if they would even score the 2-point conversion. But Taylor Heinicke went 17 for 29, 249 yards, and a touchdown. Was also sacked 3 times. Brian Robinson Jr. did his thing, 89 yards on 12 carries. Jahan Dotson, rookie coming out of Penn State, one of his best games this season, 105 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown. Terry McLaurin also had 70 yards on 6 receptions. Defensively, they also had 4 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 1 tackle for loss, no sacks, and 66 total tackles. So, not the best defensive performance. I mean, they really tried to get it done on offense, but the defense was just allowing too many points, too many big chunks of yards, and really just could not get to Daniel Jones with that semi-weak Giants offensive line. And then, as for the 49ers, they came out and beat the Seahawks. Very much needed NFC West win, and they also clinched a playoff spot. Brock Purdy went 17 for 26, 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey, 108 yards on 26 carries and a touchdown. Jordan Mason coming out of nowhere, 64 yards with 4 carries. George Kittle, 93 yards on 4 receptions and 2 touchdowns, one of his best games of the season, since he wasn't really being targeted that much earlier. And then defensively, they had 9 QB hits, 7 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 60 total tackles. So, I mean, overall, just a really well-rounded game by the 49ers, and they were able to get it done. And as for this game, I have the 49ers winning. I think easily it's safe to say that the Commanders should have a tough time playing against a 49ers defense that is, way ahead of the Giants, in my opinion. So I think the 49ers should definitely have this win over the Commanders. Now, next up, a big matchup in the NFC, and the big one in the playoff picture, and the big one in the NFC East, even though I believe the Eagles have clinched a playoff position. The Eagles coming off that win against the Bears, where Jalen Hurts did get injured. He played the entire game, and it looks like he is going to be out for this one against the Cowboys, which is definitely big news, because this is a big divisional matchup, and big in the news of the NFC playoff picture. And they're going to have Gardner Minshew starting, I believe, so it's definitely going to be interesting to see. Is there some Minshew magic left? That would be nice to see some Minshew magic. I mean, especially with the Cowboys losing to the Jaguars, Gardner Minshew's past team, his former team. I think, there might be some Minshew magic left, Jalen Hurts, 22 for 37, 315 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I mean, the Bears defense played really well against him. Through the air, I guess you could say. 2 touchdowns or 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Pretty good stat line for a defense to have against Jalen Hurts. But Jalen Hurts also was able to do it on the ground, 61 yards, 17 carries, and 3 rushing touchdowns on that. So they limited his touchdowns through the air, but they couldn't stop him. They couldn't stop him on the ground. And AJ Brown, 181 yards on 9 receptions. Devontae Smith, 126 yards on 5 receptions. And the rest of the team didn't really have anything. Kenneth Gainwell was the next with only 9 yards on 2 receptions. So, I mean, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith were just having a field day on the Bears. Defensively, the Eagles had 6 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 9 tackles for loss, 6 sacks on Justin Fields, which is really hard to take down, and 66 total tackles. Overall, great game by the Eagles. They kept it close. Jalen Hurts didn't have the best performance through the air, but he was able to make up for it on the ground, and they were able to get the win there. And then as for the Cowboys, losing in overtime to the Jaguars, unprecedented. I didn't think this was going to happen, but it did. crazy game. Won off a pick six, or lost off a pick six, I guess I should say. Dak Prescott, 23 for 30, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, was sacked 3 times, had a 71.9 QBR and 107.1 rating. Tony Pollard had 75 yards on 19 carries. Ezekiel Elliott had 58 yards on 16 carries and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb did his thing, 126 yards on 7 receptions, but that was really about it for the air game. Defensively, the Cowboys had 5 QB hits, 3 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 63 total tackles, along with an interception by DaRon Bland. But I mean, they played good. It's just that I think Jacksonville played them better. I mean, Dak Prescott had 2 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence only had 1. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had a better ratio. He outplayed Dak Prescott, in my opinion. Travis Etienne, the run game was just way better. I mean, overall, I think the Jaguars were just able to outcoach the Cowboys simply, and they were just able to get the win there, and the Cowboys just could not win. But as for this one, I do have the Eagles winning. They struggled against the Jaguars team. I think a lot of teams can take something away from that game, see where the Cowboys went wrong, why they lost, and I think that the Eagles should be able to see what went wrong for the Cowboys and try to exploit that. Now, obviously, the loss of Jalen Hurts is definitely going to hurt them, but there might be some Minshew magic, just a little ounce of Minshew magic, a sprinkle. Miles Sanders still going off. The offensive line still doing its thing. I mean, even if Gardner Minshew isn't that good, if he just targets AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, they're gonna be able to take the ball downfield. Defensively, I think they're doing their thing on defense. All they really have to do is just lock up CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard coming out of the backfield. I mean, really, it's just gonna be a really defensive matchup. I think for the Eagles, I think they really have to worry about defense. And then as for the Cowboys, again, I think they just have to produce on offense, really. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, but I have the Eagles winning here. And now next up, we have the Raiders at the Steelers. Now this game is happening on the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Unfortunately, Franco Harris did pass away yesterday, which is very sad to hear. Wish prayers to his family and everything like that. I mean, definitely a tough loss within the family. Great NFL legend, Hall of Famer. He was a really great player. And it's fitting that this game's happening on the anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. I mean, the Raiders had their own type of Immaculate Reception last week against the Patriots. With Chandler Jones picking that off and getting that touchdown. But I mean, the Raiders, they played pretty well against the Patriots. 20 for 38, 231 yards, 3 touchdowns and interception. He was sacked 3 times. On the run game, Josh Jacobs did his thing, and was just announced to the Pro Bowl as well. He had, if it opens up the stats, he had 93 yards on 22 carries. And then through the air, Keelan Cole coming out of nowhere, 50 yards on 2 receptions and a touchdown. Devontae Adams was also named to the Pro Bowl. He didn't do too well in this one, 28 yards on 4 receptions. Not much there. Defensively, Max Crosby was also named to the Pro Bowl. In this game, he had 5 total tackles, 2 solo tackles, 3 QB hits. But in total defense, they had 1 touchdown, which was that picked off by Chandler Jones. 5 QB hits, 6 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, no sacks, and 62 total tackles. So, I mean, overall, pretty well played game. They were able to keep it close throughout it, and they just were able to win off that miracle play by Chandler Jones. And then going to the Steelers game, they won. They beat the Panthers by 8. Very close one throughout. Mitch Trubisky started in this one since Kenny Pickett went to concussion protocol off that last game. And Mitch Trubisky went 17 for 22, 179 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Was only sacked once. He had 83.5 QBR and a 100.4 rating. Najee Harris, 86 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. Deontay Johnson, 98 yards, 10 receptions. George Pickens, 53 yards on 2 receptions. So overall, pretty well played offensively. Defensively, they had 6 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 46 total tackles. So, I mean, overall, just a really well-rounded game plan by the Steelers. They went into Carolina and got the job done. Now, as for this one, I do have the Raiders winning this one. Surprisingly, I know it's going to be a hard one since it is away at one of the, harder stadiums to play an away game at Heinz Field, but I think the Raiders should be able to get this one done. Seems like they have, a little bit more motivation to win games. And, I mean, they're barely in the playoff picture. We'll have to see if they can even make the playoffs. I mean, the AFC is pretty stacked right now, going into the playoff picture. So, I highly doubt they'll be able to make the playoffs. But I think the Raiders might be able to win this one, especially if Mr. Trubisky's still playing at quarterback. I think the offensive line had, they struggled a little bit. But, I think the Raiders could definitely get it done here at Pittsburgh. So I think it'll be a tough game. It's gonna be a hard one to play, but I think I just have the Raiders winning this one. Now next up we have the Packers at the Dolphins. Now the Packers coming off of a win on Monday Night Football against the Rams, winning by 12. Good return by Aaron Rodgers. I think 22 for 30, 229 yards, a touchdown, and the interception was sacked 3 times. Had a 37.7 QBR and a 92.2 rating. Aaron Jones, 90 yards on 17 carries. Romeo Doubs, 55 yards on 5 receptions. But that was really about it. Nothing much through the air. Defensively, they had 9 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 6 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, and 46 total tackles, as well as an interception by Rasul Douglas. They were just able to beat a pretty weak Rams team. Nothing really of importance to see from that win, except that Aaron Rodgers is coming back. He's playing decently well. And then as for the Dolphins, they're coming off of a close loss on Saturday against the Bills, losing by 3, 29-32. Tua Tagovailoa was 17 for 30. He had 234 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not the best stat line that you want to see, but just hit my mic. Not the best stat line that you want to see, but he still didn't throw any interceptions. I mean, Raheem Mostert had a good game. Sorry, that just went away. But yeah, Raheem Mostert had a really good game, 136 yards on 17 carries. Receiving wise, Jalen Waddle did his thing, 114 yards, 3 receptions, and a touchdown. Sam Tyreek Hill, 69 yards on 9 receptions and a touchdown. Nothing really surprising there. And then defensively, they had 6 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 67 total tackles. I mean, I think the defense just couldn't really play up to par. I mean, Tua, obviously missing 13 incompletions isn't really the best, but I think defensively they just did not show up to really stop the Bills. I mean, it was a good offensive performance by both teams, but the Dolphins defense didn't really show up and when they needed them to, and that's why they ended up losing that one. But as for this one, I do have the Dolphins beating the Packers. I think the Dolphins should be able to have a pretty easy one against them. I mean, the Packers defense didn't play all too well. And the offensive line gave up 3 sacks, and I think the Dolphins defense should be able to show up in this one. So I do have the Dolphins winning this one. Now next up, a toss-up of trash. We have the Broncos at the Rams. This one was really hard to decide. Just hit my mic again. This one was really hard to decide because both teams are so bad. I didn't know which. I was like, which team is worse? I had to weigh it out here. But the Broncos coming off of a win. Just hit my mic again. Coming off of a win by 9 points. Colt McCoy was out for a little bit during this game due to concussion, I believe. So it does look like he was out for the majority of this game. And Trace McSorley did step in. Now Trace McSorley went 7 for 15 for 95 yards. No touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Colt McCoy went 13 for 21, 78 yards, no touchdowns and an interception. James Conner did his thing though, 63 yards on 16 carries and a touchdown. Through the air, DeAndre Hopkins obviously couldn't do his thing, 60 yards on 7 receptions. And Trey McBride had 55 yards on 4 receptions. And then defensively, the Cardinals had 9 QB hits, 4 pass deflections, 8 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and 84 total tackles. I mean, they were able to get to Russell Wilson. Budda Baker also had an interception. But really offensively, not a great performance, mainly by both quarterbacks, Colt McCoy and Trace McSorley. I think that's definitely what weighed them down, just the quarterback play. Don't know why I was talking about the Cardinals for this Broncos game. But the Broncos, obviously Russell Wilson was out for this one. Not sure if he had an injury. I didn't really look into why he was out of this game, but Brett Rypien, 21 for 26, 197 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, sacked 7 times. It's crazy. He had 19.1 QBR and a 95 rating. Latavius Murray, 130 yards on 24 carries and a touchdown. Jerry Jeudy, 76 yards on 7 receptions. And defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 6 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 67 total tackles, as well as 2 interceptions by Justin Simmons, and 1 by Patrick Surtain. Really good game overall by the Broncos. I mean, Brett Rypien had a good one, only 5 incompletions. Latavius Murray had a game. Jerry Jeudy had a game. Defensively, they had a game. Justin Simmons and Patrick Surtain definitely helped them with the 3 total combined interceptions. I mean, overall, great game by the Broncos, great game, and I think that's why they won that one. And then as for the Rams, losing to the Packers by 12, tough. A lot of people were like, "Oh, Baker Mayfield." See, this is what happens when you believe in Baker Mayfield. Okay, he may have beat the Raiders, but I'm still telling you, he's not a good quarterback. But Baker Mayfield, 12 for 21, 111 yards, 1 touchdown and an interception. He was sacked 5 times. Cam Akers, 65 yards on 12 carries. Sean McVay still living up to his promise of allowing Cam Akers to have the ball a little bit more, even getting rid of Darrell Henderson, which I didn't even know he was on a different team. That was crazy. Receiving wise, couldn't really get anything done. Defensively, they had 5 QB hits, 2 pass deflections, 6 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 75 total tackles, as well as an interception by Taylor Rapp. But really offensively just could not get much done, and that's why they ended up losing this one to the Packers. Now, as for this one, I do have the Broncos winning. I think they're just a little bit of a less trash team compared to the Rams right now. Brett Rypien had a good game. I expect him to possibly start. I'm not sure if they still want to start Russell Wilson, but I expect Rypien to start. And, he had a good game. If the defense has a good game, or the same type of game that they had against the Cardinals, I feel like the Broncos would be able to win this one. Now, next up, we have the Buccaneers at the Cardinals. Now, the Buccaneers coming off a tough loss to the Bengals. They lost by 17-0 at halftime, and they blew that one. Tom Brady, 30 for 44, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And this actually makes it his 8th loss of the season, which is actually the most that he's ever had in his career in a season, 8 losses. So we're witnessing history, the downfall of Tom Brady. This is great to see, and it's crazy enough that they still might make the playoffs. They can still make the playoffs being this bad, and watch them just all of a sudden want to be good. But then receiving game, you got Chris Godwin, 83 yards on 8 receptions and a touchdown. Mike Evans, same 83 yards on 5 receptions. Russell Gage, 59 yards on 8 receptions. Defensively, they had 7 QB hits, 9 pass deflections, 0 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 65 total tackles, as well as an interception by Carlton Davis. Overall, pretty good game by the Buccaneers, but they just were not able to develop a rush game, which is really tough, and their defensive performance wasn't really all that good. Only 2 sacks, and no tackles for loss on a pretty weak Bengals offensive line. So They just could not get anything done on defense and really couldn't get anything done on the rush game, and that's why they ended up losing that one. Then as for the Cardinals, again, I kind of went over their stats. Just bad quarterback play against the Broncos led them to lose here. Now, this is probably going to be my one upset of the week, really. I mean, the Ravens over the Falcons, that could be a toss-up, really. Steelers or Raiders over Steelers could be a toss-up. Broncos over Rams could be a toss-up. But this one's really my true upset alert. I'm going to go with the Cardinals for the win. Okay, I know bad quarterback play led them to lose, but I mean, every other thing by the Cardinals, they did something good. And I think if they just keep that up, try to have a little bit better quarterback play against the Buccaneers, they could definitely win. The Bengals were in a hole, and they were able to get done by good quarterback play. And I mean, the receiving game on point, defense was on point for both the Bengals and the Cardinals last week. But the only difference was that the Cardinals had bad quarterback play. And I think if Trace McSorley can play well, he should be able to get this win over the Buccaneers. So, going with a big upset alert and taking the Cardinals over the Buccaneers. Now, for the last game of the week, we have the Chargers at the Colts. Now, the Chargers winning, beating the Titans by 3. Now, Justin Herbert went 28 for 42, 313 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It was sacked 3 times. The rush game was pretty good. Austin Eckler, 58 yards on 12 carries and a touchdown. Keenan Allen doing his thing. Great to see him back on it. 86 yards, 8 receptions. Mike Williams as well, 67 yards and 4 receptions. Joshua Palmer kind of did his thing, 49 yards on 5 receptions. Defensively, they had 5 QB hits, 5 pass deflections, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and 65 total tackles, as well as an interception by Nasir Adderley. I mean, really close game. But they were able to play really well. The run game wasn't really as developed as it usually is, but they were still able to get that win. And then as for the Colts, blowing a 33-0 lead. How do you do that? How do you blow a 33, the biggest blow of a lead in NFL history? How does that even happen? I mean, Matt Ryan, 19 for 33, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Was only sacked 3 times. Zach Moss, 81 yards on 24 carries. Deion Jackson, 55 yards on 13 carries. Now, Jonathan Taylor was out in this game since he was injured the previous week. So, he was out for this game. That could be a reason why. But, I mean, they still scored 33. Michael Pittman Jr., 60 yards on 10 receptions. Definitely needed him to do good in the fantasy playoffs. And then defensively, this is where they really start picking up 2 touchdowns. 1 pick six by Julian Blackman. And then another one from Jojo Doman, who got, I want to say, a fumble recovery for a touchdown. And then they had also 11 QB hits, 10 pass deflections, 8 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and 85 total tackles, and they still blew a 33-point lead. So I think it's safe to say that the Chargers will probably win this one, even though it's in Indianapolis. I think the Colts, the morale's got to be low. They blow a 33-point lead, and just overall just not the best play by them. And I think the Chargers, they're on a hot streak right now, so I think they definitely can get a win here. And that'll be all for this week's predictions for Week 16. We got like 2 more weeks after this. That's crazy to me. Then I'll have to do my playoff predictions. So, and there's still a lot to, go through here with the seeding and everything. So it's definitely going to be a few, interesting few weeks. But, great predictions here. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening and watching all the way through, and have a good one.